Okay, big question to start with. Why is it good for women to do strength training specifically?
For women, especially lifting heavy, probably in some cases, many cases, can demonstrate a higher return on net investment than for males because
Interesting.
females encounter the same world as males do physically. Car doors weigh the same for females and males, children weigh the same, but females are genetically significantly less strong than males. So when males get stronger, they exit the realistic use of strength quite quickly. If you're a male of average genetics, you get 1.5 times stronger than you were supposed to be. Then, outside of like fighting crime, there's not really anything you can do better that's practical. If you're female and you become significantly stronger through weight training, then your life in many respects will get notably easier, and you will no longer find difficulty with things that you traditionally found difficulty doing. And that's a big deal. It's the first big deal, but it's not the only big deal. Another big deal is that when you have a larger degree of muscle mass, just more muscle on your body, it confers a number of health, mobility, injury reduction, and aesthetic benefits that are not innumerable, but would be painful to recount all of them. So tons, huge benefits from just getting more muscle. Just a quick preview. Muscle is an anti-diabetic tissue. It consistently consumes carbohydrates from your bloodstream, which means it keeps you low in total blood glucose, which is super health promoting. Muscle mass gives you an aesthetic quality that mirrors what is sexually selected for to a large degree among very many populations. So very many females are interested in looking good, quote unquote. And there is some discussion about what that means, but cultural universals show that if you lift weights, typically you get significantly closer to looking good as defined by the vast majority of people. And because looking good is an interesting thing to discuss in a sociological context of, once you're in your 30s, like, are you really still 13 years old? You're supposed to be obsessed with how you look. There's a very good open question. But the reality is that people generally like to at least feel like they look good to themselves. The ultimate thing isn't like if you get catcalled. It's honest, just generally annoying. But if you're strong, it doesn't matter because you're like, come here, I'm going to beat you up. But if you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, all right, we're doing shit. This looks great. Hey, no, that's awesome. And resistance training can be a huge help to that. And there's many other benefits, but one last big one is bone growth and bone health. The general story here is that females will consistently grow their bones until they're somewhere in their 20s. And then bone growth typically stops on net balance. There's lots of turnover. And then in the 40s and 50s, bone mass starts to decline. So you get less and less bone. This puts women, more specifically Caucasian women, now all women, but Caucasian women more than others, at an early risk of osteopenia and osteoporosis. Osteopenia is just when your bones are really skinny and brittle. Osteoporosis is when they're skinny and brittle enough for medical professionals to be concerned with your probability of random bone fracture in day-to-day activities, which kind of sucks, and it's really, really terrible. And so if you resistance train, not only can you build a total greater bone mass, but you can also continue to build bone with good nutritional strategies in addition to that, well into your 40s and 50s. And then your probability of getting osteoporotic or osteopenic gets into the 50-50 range at when you're statistically like 110 years old. Now, if you live to be a 110, great problem to have. But for most people, that means, in the standard idea, when people croak in their 80s, or Caucasian women roughly in modern countries tend to expire around age 80, just above, there's a very good chance that you'll simply never encounter any kind of bone problems if you lift weights for a long time. And this effect is great, an incredible effect if it's done through the lifespan, the weight training, but it has massive effects, not quite as big, but still very notable ones and impactful ones, no matter when you start. So if you're 75 years old and you're like, I'm just going to let the clock run out, maybe you don't do that. You engage resistance training. It can significantly slow bone loss, and in some cases actually grow net bone mass. And then that can just straight up save you in a huge way. Never mind the muscle building effects, which can metabolically reverse a bunch of stuff. And especially when you're older, having the mobility and the strength and the health that comes with having muscle in many ways functionally reverses your age substantially. Like if you look at a 65-year-old woman and it turns out that she can take 2 of her bags that she takes to the airport and do a full deep squat with them for 10 reps and then dump them, you're like, yeah, I know she's 65, but she's not really 65. My girlfriend's 19 and she can't do that. So this woman's younger in a very important way. And that's a big, big deal. So weight training is this thing where, and back to my earlier point really quick, males don't have a huge osteopenia and osteoporosis problem. Even late age, you'd have to be statistically unlucky to be a male and experience that. Males typically don't have a real world strength problem in their later years. Very few people struggle with putting the bag onto the upper shelf of the airplane and such. But females, because they're genetically not as strong to begin with, if they weight train, the relative benefits for them are often just way greater. So to a young man who lifts weights, after a few months is just for show. It's just for fun to just see like how strong you can get. It's kind of like you already have like a regular car that, goes, do you do miles or kilometers as far as speed? What do you prefer?
Miles for the English audience, but we've got a lot of Americans listening. So
also miles. If you're a male, you already, your muscles, your body is a car that can go 120 miles an hour. Plenty for the freeway, plenty for acceleration, no problem. But if you're female and especially didn't get the genetic lottery as far as muscle mass is concerned, as respect with females is concerned, and you're in your later years, you could be in a situation where your maximum speed for your car is like 30 or 40 miles an hour. Now, there are freeways you can't go on anymore. There are maneuvers to get out of the way of a big truck that you can't pull off fast enough. So if you take that female and get her up to a 60 mile an hour maximum, by analogy with greater muscle mass and strength through resistance training, that's a very meaningful change. Whereas for the male, it goes from 120 to 160. Like, unless you do like midnight club or whatever, or race down the streets of San Francisco at night, it just doesn't matter. So that's how come it's a huge, huge deal for females. And interestingly enough, not so comically ironic, because female adoption of resistance training has characteristically been substantially lower than that of males for a variety of reasons we could get into if you like.
Yeah. So we've got metabolic advantages, we've got aesthetic, we've got the longevity stuff. On the metabolic, just first, and partly for selfish reasons, my husband is a very good power lifter. He's one of these like trying to go at 160 miles an hour kind of level guys, and he also has a terrible diet. He eats an enormous amount of sugar, ultra-processed foods. I'm sure he'll be listening to this. I'm publicly declaring this. And he tells me that he cannot get diabetes because he is so muscular that it is impossible for him to get diabetes. Mm-hmm. What's your professional opinion on that claim?
We're going into family therapy real quick. Huh? So how lean is he? If I have to ask if we're bringing it up, it's just pertinent to the question.
It depends on whether he's competing. So his body fat will depend on where he is in his bulking and cutting cycle.
Okay. Does he ever have enough fat for his gut to like hang below his pants a little bit, like poof out over the jeans?
No.
Does he have ever a small enough amount of fat for you to see like a 4-pack or a 6-pack?
Only if he's just done a big cut, but that's not often.
Well, so I'll put it this way. I would say it's impossible for him to get diabetes. But I would say if he has a large degree of muscle mass, and to the extent that his muscle mass is greater than it is lower, his risk for diabetes substantially drops off. So the three big factors in diabetes that you have some degree of control over. One is how much muscle you have. One is how much fat you have. And one is what is your typical daily level of physical activity. If you have a large degree of muscle mass, each one of these can be seen as turn dials, and like the number that they control is like risk of diabetes. If you turn up muscle, turn down fat, and turn up physical activity, the risk of diabetes becomes vanishingly small. Genetics equated. Some people just have it coming. So for your husband specifically, if he wanted to become even more anti-diabetic, he could gain more muscle, but he's probably really jacked already. He could definitely lose some fat. Part of that could involve him cleaning up his diet, but to be honest, if he just reduces his total food consumption, leaving his protein high, he can get quite lean eating all kinds of bad stuff. The thing is, if he's a powerlifter, I'm not sure what his other activities are, but sometimes powerlifters have a relatively low amount of daily physical activity. And that's good because it keeps you stronger. You don't want to get tired walking around, but it's not great for diabetes. So that would be something that, so just to recapitulate, as your husband is substantially at lower risk than everyone else, a match for his age on average for diabetes now and later. But if he cranked down the body fat, cranked up the physical activity, then he would be at even lower risk for sure.
I've encountered gym friends of his in the powerlifting world who prioritize their strength so much over their health that, for instance, they actually have very poor cardiovascular health and they struggle to breathe properly. I mean, obviously that's at the very, very tippy top end of strength training, so we don't want to be putting anyone off, but there is a balance to some extent, right, in terms of if you're aiming for really high level, to be a very high level strength athlete, sometimes you will suffer trade-offs in other areas of health.
It's definitely a thing. You have to really earn your way to getting your health to be shifted over by your weight training in the negative direction. It's not really the weight training that's doing it. It's usually the nutrition and the physical activity and the performance enhancing substances that people take. So if you have a very low level of physical activity, even with a high degree of muscularity, if you have a high degree of body fat as well, which many powerlifters do, and if you take anabolic androgenic steroids and a few other compounds and you don't regularly check blood work, you don't take drugs to cancel out some of those negative effects, you're not healthy and you're on your way to likely early death, sometimes substantially earlier death than you had intended. Well, maybe none of us intend to die, but you get my drift. So that's a big deal. And again, I would go back to that equation and say, increase muscle, decrease body fat, increase physical activity. If you use steroids and stuff, everything becomes more risky. So if you take those out, there's not really a way that someone who's not using steroids can be too muscular and too lean and too physically active for best health outside of just insane levels of physical activity, which end up putting you into an overtrained or overreached state where you're just consistently ultra tired, barely have sex drive, you barely sleep. Now, usually your body will pull you the hell away from that by being like, it just takes your motivation to do any of that and reverses it into the negative. So usually people are unlikely to overdo it. And I think that's an important point. And maybe later, maybe now we can dovetail into the idea that a lot of females fear resistance training and weight training because they think it'll push them over, at least aesthetically, into that other side of the way too much aisle. And that is possible to do, but exceedingly difficult.
Yeah, right. So on to the aesthetic question. I think you're right that a lot of women who have not tried lifting heavy before are put off because they worry about getting bulky. I know, that actually getting bulky as a woman is extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah. There have been a few analogies made. I'll steal one. Imagine you have a 15-year-old daughter and you're just out front of the yard. Let's say, I don't know how it works in the United Kingdom, but in the United States, many people live in suburban communities, in a little basketball hoop outside of your garage. And you kind of, you toss her the basketball and you're like, all right, Lindsay, hit a shot. Let's see what you got, girl. And she grabs the ball and she looks at it. She's like, I don't know about all this. And you're like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I mean, during Kobe's later years, his relationship with his wife was substantially strained by the fame of being Kobe. And you're like, I'm sorry, did you have an aneurysm? What the hell is going on? What? Why? Are you on social media too much? What's going on? And she's like, there is some kind of risk that I'll become an NBA superstar if I really take this ball and just go to town. And that scares me. And you're like, okay, have a seat. It takes unreal luck and talent and dedication and years to even become someone female who at the grocery store, when you have a tank top on, The old lady bagging your groceries is from a different time sociologically will be like, oh my, what a beast she is, what an animal, how unbecoming, how unfeminine. I mean, that alone is tough. But to get to the point where modern peoples, your social circle, your friends, people at your corporate sphere are like, did you see Lindsay? Like, what's up with her shoulders? Like, holy crap, is she like an American football player? That is preposterously difficult for almost all females. The opposite is the sociological commonplace. It's almost a joke where a female will train for years specifically with the purpose of getting as jacked as possible, not just general weight training for aesthetics and health. And she puts on a blouse, she goes out, and a guy leans in drunk when she's at the club and he's like, so what do you do? And she's like, I lift weights. And he's like, really? And you're like, oh, God damn it. Do I have to take my shirt off and flex? How come people still can't tell that I lift weights? And it's because unless you get very large, and that only ever happens if you eat lots of food, typically junky food, you can't get bulky. Arnold Schwarzenegger did not get to 235 pounds by simply lifting weights. He got there by force feeding himself. I weigh 225 pounds today as I sit and talk with you. I've had times in my life where I look at food and I'm like, what the hell am I even doing? Why am I doing this to myself? It doesn't just magically happen that you put tons and pounds and pounds. Now I'm doing this in my own case with the assistance of a naturally normal level of testosterone, with all of the other male physiology, with pretty good genetics, and more recently, the last half of my career, with boatloads of anabolic steroids. That's how you do that. If you don't have any of those, and you're just the average Caucasian female, you're going to lift weights for several years. And if you control your diet enough to stay roughly the same weight, what's going to happen is your waist is going to shrink down substantially. Your arms are going to look about the same size, but look like muscular arms instead of just they exist kind of arms. And your lower body is going to turn into goddess energy mode. And then everyone's just going to stare at you and say lewd things to you like you always planned when you planned to be super hot back in the day. And the number of people that call you excessively muscular are going to be rendered into roughly two categories of people, maybe three. One is old people with different values, fine, but it's adorable when they say that. You don't get offended because a 70-year-old woman called you muscular. The other is, if I may use the term, hopefully it doesn't get you banned here, slut shaming. Jealous women are not interested in supporting you. And so when they see that you're jacked and really attractive and their boyfriend's looking at you and not them, they might say, oh my God, she's so gross, she's so muscular. Like, yeah, but like, that's not real. That's just jealous bitches being jealous bitches. She's going to say all kinds of things that she doesn't even mean just to bring you down. And the last one is same idea, but guys that you denied. So as you can easily, if you're a muscular woman, remotely have any muscle, start an Instagram account and just let the DMs come in. The DMs are going to come in and they're going to be like, hey, I love you. You're beautiful. And you go, hey, I'm good. Thanks. And they go, slut. By the way, you look huge. You're giant, you're ugly, you're muscular, you look like the Hulk. And that's just a product of the embarrassment and shame of failing to get laid. And so we clear all those categories of people away. No, almost no one's going to think you're excessively muscular in almost any circumstance. So the fear that with resistance training, you're going to get too bulky is kind of like one of the most unsubstantiated fears ever. I don't want to strain the analogy, but like imagine having a very precocious 8-year-old for a son or a daughter. And she's really worried, like at an existential level, that the boogeyman in the closet's going to finally come out and do what he's meant to, which is, I suppose, hurt children. At some point, you have to sit down and go, I'm going to lay some real crazy shit on you, but the boogeyman was never real. It just legitimately just does not exist. Female radical bulkiness that interferes with your way of life does exist, but it's like a 1 in 1,000 phenomenon. So maybe a better analogy is you're like, hey, Katie, do you want to go out tonight? And she's like, I'm staying in. And you're like, why? What's up? She's like, there's a thunderstorm predicted. You're like, okay, we have a car and umbrella. She's like, lightning is going to kill us. And you're like, are you taking your medicine? Are you good to go? That's the degree of disassociation between realistic fear and the realistic probability of outcomes. Here's another really cool piece of news. If by some chance, as a female, someone listening to this goes, okay, Dr. Mike, fine, I'm going to start resistance training, and they find that they have the golden fleece of muscle building genetics and just get way too bulky for their tastes really fast, there's one super weapon for reversing all of those gains. You just stop training heavy. And within weeks, you lose most of the muscle and ta-da, nobody lost, nobody found. So again, one of those things that it's a very interesting microcosm of one of the most irrational fears possible.
When you do see women who look quite bulky, I'm thinking of like CrossFit athletes. I've done a bit of CrossFit when I'm not pregnant. Um, Elite CrossFit women, they have jack shoulders and stuff. I assume they're taking steroids, right? They must be to look like that.
I think the vast majority of CrossFit women don't take steroids, but some do. I think it's probably the minority.
The ones who compete in the games.
I mean, most of the ones that compete in the games probably don't take steroids.
Okay.
Some of them do, but most of them probably don't. When you look at the people who compete in the games, this is a very advanced global selector mechanism for the best genetics ever. Like the Dottirs from Iceland, they all have the same last name suffix there. There's a couple, 3 or 4 amazing CrossFitters over the past several years that are from Iceland. But they're just built different, and they're just better. And they're just started out pretty jacked, and then as soon as they start lifting, they're insanely jacked. I worked with a girl back when I was a graduate student who became a training partner of mine, and she had been lifting for like a year. And I thought she was 2 things: competitive athlete and on steroids. She was neither of those. She continued to lift in a more scientific manner for another year, and she just started winning competitions, drug-free, against juiced-up girls. That's just who she was. And her mom, when she was younger, was a track sprinter. It just naturally was able to grow muscle. One in a million. And that is possible, but all the 1 in a million girls at the CrossFit Games, the top 20, there's like 15 of those girls are like 1 in a million, 1 in 100,000. And so when you look at them and you're like, whoa, that's weight training, right? Like that's weight training to a person who had it coming way early. It's like looking at child chess champions and being like, man, these kids are smart, bro. Chess does this? Like, chess does not do this. These kids were geniuses when they were kids, and then someone's like, here's a chessboard, and then they figured out, yeah, they're going to look different.
Are those women higher naturally in testosterone, do you think? Is that one of the factors that makes them better at building muscle?
That's a good question. Sometimes, on average, yes, but not always. There are several other mechanisms that could explain it. One is higher testosterone levels. One is higher testosterone receptor sensitivity, maybe generally and maybe just in skeletal muscle. So for the same amount of testosterone, you see a bigger effect. Something that is potentially politically incorrect, but I honestly just don't give a shit anymore, is people of West African descent who win almost every sprint race and who dominate the National Football League and everything. They have, on average, higher testosterone levels than East Africans and Caucasians and everyone else, but not as high as you would think. It turns out the receptor densities and receptor affinities for testosterone are higher, substantially higher. So for the same amount of steroids, they just get more out of it. From the same amount of endogenous testosterone, they just get more out of it. And the third option is testosterone is one of the messenger molecules to increase muscle, but testosterone really is a masculinizing hormone. It does all the male things, and one of them is to increase muscle, but there's hundreds of other things that it does that have nothing to do with that. How muscular a girl is mostly has to do with the genetics she has for skeletal muscle. For example, the sensitivity of her P70S6 kinase complex, the myostatin levels, and all these other tons of molecules internally that regulate this process. You could just have like 30% lower myostatin, and myostatin is a chemical that prevents muscle growth. It turns out the human body's weird. No one really suspected this, but muscle growth is kind of always trying to go. And there's a couple of molecules related to the myostatin family, which just keep that plugged up. But if you reduce them, muscle growth just goes boom. You ever seen the super muscular mice and greyhounds and cows with like double the muscle? They just have a genetic deformity that myostatin's broken entirely. It just doesn't work. And so they just get ultra jacked. Since some females and some males, myostatin is produced at a lower level. And then they're just jacked, but no testosterone is involved. Sometimes you get all three, where you have the higher testosterone, higher binding affinity, and lower myostatin. And then you got luck of the draw. Then you're 1 in a million. And then if you lift weights, you look substantially more muscular. Though I do contend that a lot of this is relative to body size. So if you are a female who's 5'4" or whatever, and you weigh 135 pounds, there's just not that many people in the world who are 5'4" and 135 pounds whom anyone would describe as exceptionally bulky or muscular. You're just small. And that's okay. So if you're a female and you just rounded delts and veiny biceps and ripped quads, but you weigh, 130 at 5'4", and there's very few people are going to look at you twice. Now, if you're wearing a tank top and you got your traps on your back going on, yeah, some people are going to think like, whoa. But bulky just doesn't quite describe it. You know what you need to be bulky is bulk. Now, if you're a woman that weighs 200 pounds and you have jacked arms, you're bulky, which I think is dope. But many women are not interested in. Here's a real hack to that. Just don't weigh 200 pounds. And if you do, consider the many validated approaches to reduce your body weight. Even as you reduce your body weight, if you still have lots of muscle underneath, you'll be lean and ripped. You will not be bulky because bulk requires size.
Many of you will know that Christianity is a subject of fascination for me, and the role of Christianity in shaping the modern world is a theme I return to again and again on the podcast. My view is that we really can't understand the world or ourselves without getting to grips with it, which is why I'm very glad to point you towards a new online course called 321. It's an introduction to Christianity that's imaginative, thoughtful, engaging. It assumes absolutely no prior knowledge. It's presented by the wonderful Glenn Scrivener, who has been a guest on the MMM podcast previously, and I've also been a guest on his show. Glenn presents 8 video-led sessions which are based around some beautiful animated stories that illustrate the Christian message. You can check it out for free at 321course.com/MMM. Just enter your email, choose a password, and you're in. There's no spam, there's no fees. Just visit 321course.com/MMM. And now onto the show. Do you have to lift really heavy to get as muscular as you need to be to reap all the benefits that we've talked about? The thing I'm thinking of particularly is Pilates, which I'm sure you'll know is a very kind of, particularly Pilates reformer, very trendy kind of exercise among women. There's a belief that it will make you like long and lean. Women who are really good at Pilates reformer typically have amazing figures. I like it. It has its advantages as a mode of exercise, but to me, it seems as unlikely to actually make you as muscular as lifting heavy. But do you think that there are multiple routes to getting there, and it's just about sort of your preferences and different efficiencies, or what do you think?
That's a great question. What makes muscles larger is when they are presented with a resistance that is roughly between their 5 rep max. If I put some weight on the bench press that you could only do for 5 reps and then after it falls on you, all the way up to roughly your 30 rep max, which is quite light. I mean, 25 reps on the bench is just downright annoying.
Yeah.
It's not a ton of resistance, but if in both cases you get to a high degree of muscular local fatigue in your workout, like, oh my God, my arms are about to give out, that sort of feeling, and it happens multiple times through the workout such that afterwards your muscles feel drained and exhausted, that's really the formula that causes muscle growth. If you present those forces through grappling, through Pilates, through weight-assisted yoga, or even if you're not super strong yet, some yoga poses really push you to the limit and get you sore and all that stuff, then that's totally great and can result in robust muscle gains and all the attendant health benefits and everything. The thing is that resistance training is 2 things. One, able to load you with substantially more load that after your beginner phase, Pilates just ain't cutting it anymore as far as getting you much more muscle. And 2, it is tailor-made to target specific muscle parts of your body and to be loadable in a very incremental fashion. If you get good at Pilates, how do you get to the next level of getting jacked using Pilates? There's ways to do it. It's a bit of a question. But if you get jacked using standard weight training, resistance training exercises, the way to get more jacked is just over time, put another 10 pounds on the bar. It's a very easy answer. And, the weights come in 2.5 pound increments and everything. So it's really super convenient. Last thing I'll say on this is, so it's possible, but it's not the most efficient route. But I'll say this. Back to my earlier point or earlier discussion about how females get a way bigger relative return on investment for resistance training than males. Another way to put that is, if you're female, you're going to have a real hard time gaining as much muscle as you can in order to get the best health and aesthetic and longevity benefits that you can. The deck is stacked against you. And so if I was a male of Nigerian birth with Nigerian super genetics where they just have like ripped everything for no reason. And I was also physically active. And I was like, can I do Pilates and stay pretty jacked? I'd be like, yeah, man, you just live your life, bro. You'll be jacked. But Pilates is probably going to make you like damn near a pro bodybuilder, because why not? But if you're a Caucasian female who weighs 115 pounds and your arms, though attractive, are like doughy, mushy, there's nothing in there, you need weight training to make a big difference. And typically the Pilates instructor is a person on average who lives their life through the fitness lens. That girl probably does weights too. Most of the yoga instructors are down. They train with weights 5 days a week. They do yoga 18 hours a day, and they eat super, super healthy. And so they're ripped and lean and all that stuff. But they also have really great genetics in many cases. Nobody goes to a yoga class where the instructor, you imagine coming into a yoga class or Pilates class and she's like, hi, I'm Sheila, I'm your instructor. And you look her up and down, and you're like, I'm in the wrong class. I don't want to look like that. The hell? Like, you're supposed to be one of these beboppers that's really lean and stuff. That's what I want. And so a lot of times there's a selection for really good genetics as well. And you look at her and you go, she did it with Pilates. Like, yeah, but you're not her. And she lives fitness as a whole total lifestyle. You're a stock trader in downtown London and you have 4 total hours a week to exercise. You're Caucasian, you're 29 years old, you weigh 115 pounds. You better get into the gym and start resistance training, because the ROI on that for you is 2 things: high, and kind of the only thing that can break you out into a different physique and a much bigger health. Because for all the people that look amazing doing Pilates, there are way more by percentage that they have to tell you they exercise in order for you to understand it. You would never guess it based on their physique or based on their strength. And then they're like, Pilates, I do Pilates. And usually I do like do you know who Thomas Sowell is by any chance?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. He had an amazing number of cynical reactions to being debated live. And one of them was that he hears you speaking, but doesn't acknowledge that you said anything true. He just acknowledges that you said something. Sometimes people will be like, I do Pilates. And I go, and it's just like, yes, yes, you do. And they're like, usually the follow up is like, is that good? And then I get into the spiel of like, it's totally great. It's super fun. It's awesome. It's health promoting. It helps you become mobile and flexible, builds a little bit of muscle. But if you really want to crank up all those other benefits, you're going to have to take it to the teeth. And another thing I'll say, and we can talk about this for an extensive period of time. This is your podcast. I don't want to tell you what to talk about, but there are sociological and neuroendocrinological reasons that the vast majority of females avoid heavy resistance training. They didn't by chance get to Pilates and yoga. They didn't by chance avoid resistance training for a large degree of human history in which we had resistance training. There's an endemic quality to how females think on average, that prevents them from really investing into the lifting hard situation. And sometimes when people tell you, oh, I do Pilates, you go, hey, have you tried resistance training? They're like, I'm good with Pilates. I really like it. And why they like it is often goes back to that women are drawn to certain things on average that men are not, and vice versa.
Interesting. So is this, I'll tell you, I really don't like maxing out. I do like powerlifting and I've done it for ages, but I particularly don't like maxing out on squat. I find it just scary. I don't like it. I'm not that, I have no desire to compete. I don't think I ever will. Is that partly what you're talking about there? That kind of competitive drive that men have? Or are there other?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What's going on psychologically?
Oh, yeah. It's not even just competitive. Men want things that are scary and difficult from a physical perspective to happen to them because they want to happen to those things. Like if you tell me like, hey, like Mike, what's your crazy fantasy that when full immersion virtual reality comes out, you'll just play that and just play in that video game world? You're familiar with the series called The Boys on Amazon Prime by any chance?
I'm actually not, sorry.
It's like superheroes, but they're evil. They're kind of jaded, and some of them aren't so good. And there's one in there that's like the strongest of all of them. My fantasy is to be in that world and to have such crazy superpowers that, preferably in public, he punches me at full force into my head and his fist breaks and he's crying and screaming and blood is spilling out. And I'm just standing there just in awe of my own power. Now, like, how many females have anything remote to that fantasy? I mean, some. My wife is getting into competitive jiu-jitsu and she just wants blood all the time. This is really unusual. A 1 rep max is a microcosm of that. There's a weight that can hurt you. There's a weight that will push back. It has no emotions. It only has steel. Why would you lift it? It's a better question to ask why you would do this. Like, imagine aliens come down to Earth. They start studying us. They get to a gym and they're like, why are you lifting like this? And you're like, because like my dad yelled at me a lot when I was little. It made me feel disempowered, I guess. I don't know. Like, there's nothing proximate for you to be doing there. There's also no real benefit that a good hard set of 5 doesn't give you that a single like maximum 1 RM does give you. It's ego. It's I want to be in the pain. I want to hurt myself and I want to run out of energy hurting myself. And then I want to come back the next day and do it. I want war. I want to start war. I want to finish war. That's a thing that's very male. And some women, they're the warrior princess archetype all the way through. God bless them. It's awesome. I personally think it's awesome, but my personal values are rather irrelevant. A lot of females on average, they're going to be a bit more reserved about hurting their bodies, about putting themselves at physical risk. I mean, like, I think if you're aware of all these things probably better than me, but female preferences for types of work to do. Look how many girls are like, I want to be an Alaskan logger and have the fucking trees fall on me all the time. Like, it's unlikely. And hard, heavy lifting falls into that category. It's not work. Nobody pays you for it, but very male type, risky, dangerous, painful stuff. Now, the good news is it's very, very safe. It just looks dangerous. But when something looks dangerous, you got a line of 20 guys trying it and a line of 2 girls trying it. And I think females tend to have those internal feelings of trying to avoid really painful, terrible, heavy things, which is evolutionarily highly adaptive. I mean, like, imagine having a pregnant wife. Imagine you drawing out the fucking axe and spear and being like, I'm going on the mammoth hunt with you guys. They'd be like, are you insane? You are the future of our society. You better stay in the village. Holy crap, what's wrong with you? So nowadays it's not a concern, but genetics are a thing and they stay with us. And a lot of females have a little bit of trouble with that teeth gritting bullshit and really putting themselves in the line of fire. It can be learned, but learning it requires an interest in learning it and a desire to learn it. It's like, hey, like, if I teach you how to jump onto this rock and smash your face open, you could be good at it. They're like, wait, why would I want to learn that? So a lot of times, like, oh, eventually you'll learn to love crushing your body under heavy loads with barbells. Some women are like, that's cool for other people to learn. I'm good on that respect. But the real thing is, once you've sort of examined that intellectual space as a female, you can say, okay, there are things that I like to do, that I prefer to do. And they may give me the results that I want in health and longevity and aesthetics and everything. Now, there's another category of things I might not like as much. I could learn to love it eventually, and I could do it in a way that I don't totally hate, but it's not like my first choice. And if that doesn't give me amazing results, fuck it, whatever. But if it gives me amazing results, precisely the results that I want, I'm going to do it. No, real talk, this is disgusting. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but like, I brush my teeth for one of 2 reasons. One is because after a while, your mouth just feels gross. But the other one is like, you typically don't want to present in civilized public society with disgusting mouth and breath. But that second one really makes a much bigger difference for me than the first. So, as you know, like the bachelor concept of a male, like, you ever been to a bachelor pad, a couple of guys live? It's a fucking pigsty. It's disgusting. They're totally happy to do it. So males on average aren't typically drawn to being neat and clean and organized and present themselves well to the world. Females are A-listers at that, unbelievable at that. But as a grown up, as a grown man, you be look, I'm not going to get a promotion. I have ketchup stains on my shirt at work. I'm going to get a nice clean shirt. I'm going to brush my hair before I go to work. I hate brushing my hair. I hate shopping for clothes. But damn it, as an adult who wants certain outcomes afterwards, I'm going to do these things. As a female, you may look at weight training and go, I don't want this, but god damn it, it's got all these benefits. And then you do it, you ease into it, and then all of a sudden it's amazing and it's giving all these awesome things, but you had to go over that speed bump initially of like, this isn't me.
Okay, for people listening, for women in particular listening, who have not tried lifting heavy before and are thinking maybe I should, advice in terms of how to actually stick to a gym routine, find a gym routine you like and stick to it. I'm guessing for men, advice would include things like competing, going to a very masked gym where you like showing off in front of the other guys, like that kind of stuff is going to be very motivating. not so for women. What do you think? What do you think is likely to work well as a strategy for women to actually keep up with a strength routine, given what we know about the average psychological sex differences?
I would architect my preferences and the reason I'm doing this based on a different set of values than typically. Or maybe this is an idea to try. You're going to the gym to accomplish certain things. So automatically you treat it not so much as a leisure activity, but as a checklist item in your weekly or daily to-do list. This is a thing as an adult female with some fucking willpower I chose to do. And I'm not the kind of person that waffles. I'm going to get it done. The other thing is you can really focus in on becoming meticulous with your technique. Guys are great and all, and they try really hard, but oftentimes their ego gets so ahead of their technique that they learn to lift wrong, and then they get hurt, or they just never get as strong and developed as they could. Females don't generally have that problem nearly to the same extent. And so typically in my instruction of resistance training techniques, females just make way better learners. And because they don't let ego interfere, and also because they care to do something well. You ever see like a 6-year-old girl like write her name? It's all bubble letters, it's all perfect, and a guy's like, barely literate, and you're like, this is the kind of meticulous that's going to get you a lot of money in the workforce, young lady. You keep it up. And that meticulous attention to technique is really awesome. And then getting yourself a program that has a logical progression that progresses loads and reps for you, so you don't have to wrestle with the internal judgment of, am I challenging myself hard enough? So for example, for folks that have been lifting more than a few months and know what sets and reps are and stuff like that, we have an app with my company, RP, the RP Hypertrophy app. It's designed exactly to get you just more muscle. And one of the things the app does is you pick all of your weights in the first week yourself. No value judgments. Pick whatever weight you want. And then you rate how that weight felt throughout various questions the app asks you. The next week, whatever you did, chances are it's going to add 2.5 pounds to that, or 5 pounds, or it's going to add a repetition. Last week you did 100 pounds for a set of 6. This week it's going to ask you to do 105 pounds for a set of 6. And in order, you can always edit it, but there's something conscious that you have to actually hit delete. It's like a variety of obscene analogies came to mind, so I'll table those for never. But it's kind of like you're just sitting at like a internet cafe. You're unlikely to raise your hand and be like, "This internet's down. I want porn. So can you guys turn it back on?" And be like, Jesus, people don't go out of their way to admit that sort of thing. In just the same way, the app says do this. The app's got science and AI and algorithms in it. It knows what to do. In order for you to do less and get away from that zone of difficulty, you're going to have to consciously be like, I'm a wuss. Here I go, deleting 55 pounds and putting in 45. And the app even tells you, like, this is a decrease in your performance. You have to look at this down arrow, shaming the living dog shit out of you. And so if you get a program that you emphasize technique a ton, emphasize consistency, and just let the program increase the loads or reps for you as the challenge continues, then you don't have to go in there and go, I'm taking it to the teeth and I want more. I'm going to do 10 pounds more. This is not a decision you have to make. You just have to go in and meticulously execute the plan that is written. It's perfectly structured for your body. If you can do that, it's just like following instructions. Easy, simple, no problem. It's like about as challenging psychologically as putting a recipe together and cooking something at home. Like guys will look at a recipe and be like, holy shit, I'm going to fuck all this up. I'm going to burn the house down. Women look at it and they're like, okay, chocolate chips, this, that, and they just go. I would approach resistance training, try to approach it that way if you are female and happen to think that the whole like drawing the Roman gladiator sword and stabbing the barbell in the face energy doesn't really jive with you. That's how maybe you go about it. Now, I must say some women really like the challenge and really like the brutality. And then that's dope. Another thing is, there is because you brought up the where to go to work out situation. There's so much to say about the sociology and the psychology of choosing where to lift and how to relate to other people. But, maybe this will be somewhat helpful for females to hear from someone like me. So feel free to, because it's just I'm in a t-shirt and it's only half my body. Google pictures of me. I'm that guy in the gym that the jacked guys, when I walk in, go, holy crap. And so I'm the scary guy at the gym. My face even looks all weird. My head shape's not like a human being's or whatever. And let me tell you something very, very, very insightful. the overwhelming majority of the scary big guys at the gym, they're not judging you. They're really self-involved. If you're like, hey, Mike, you've been lifting in this gym for like 45 minutes. I'm like, yeah, man, pump is out of this world. They're like, what do you think of Debbie there on the leg press? I'm like, oh, I didn't know her name was Debbie. Do you see her? Like, that one? Like, no, the other girl. Like, all right. I don't know. I haven't thought of her yet. I'm like, but aren't you judging her technique and effort? No. Do you think I built this body with anything other than just obscene and probably just totally psychologically diseased levels of self-infatuation? I ain't here for anyone else. Now, you may receive some attention from males when you're lifting, and that can be weird because you're in the gym. There's always big scary dudes and a lot of fit chicks. We can talk about how to relate to fit chicks because they're also intimidating. You're like, this is a place for this girl. This is not my place. I'm like, I'm somewhere where I'm not supposed to be. It's like if you show up to like a hood rap battle kind of Eminem vibe, and you're wearing like a Stardust raver outfit, and you're like, ta-da! They're like, what are you doing here? You're like, wrong party, fellas. But it seems like that. But the reality is almost no one cares. And in the vast majority of cases, the guys that will say something to you, they'll say something to you not because you don't belong or because your technique is bad. The maybe 99% of the reason males will talk to you at the gym files under trying to get laid. That's it, which makes the gym no different than any other place where guys talk to you on the bus, at school. They're just trying to get laid. It's old hat. It's yawn. I've been dealing with this shit since I was 15 years old. It's no different. So as a female coming from a monster like me, it might be good to hear you're in the gym. It's you time. Here's the thing. Pop them headphones in, girl. You're good. It's all you. And don't you dare think the gym is not a place for you. Imagine the CEO of Gold's Gym or any other large gym franchise. You talk to, let's say you got bumped up to first class somehow on a flight and you're sitting next to the CEO and you're a female and you've been considering lifting weights and you go, I don't think the gym is like a place for people like me. He's going to be like, lady, are you trying to take money out of my fucking pocket? My bottom line? They want everyone in the gym. Okay. So the corporation is insanely welcoming. So for example, if a guy is leering at you or doing weird stuff, you just walk up to the front desk and be like, that guy is doing the following things that creep me out. They're going to be like, come here. One warning. You're out forever. Nobody fucks with that. Are you crazy? What years, right? So everyone by corporate design is more than welcome. And they're not just welcome. Welcome is like, hey, you can come in and you can leave. They want you to be here. You specifically, day one, you, out of shape you. The gym is not just a place for insanely in shape people to frolic with the angels. It's a place for you to get into your best shape. So when people are ultra obese, let's say, they walk into the gym, they feel a lot of intimidation. They're like, oh my God, this isn't my place. No. This is exactly your place. And for a bit of a comedic take, if you take a look at that super jack chick over there, that super steroided out bodybuilder with veins, they're kind of like, what do you even need the gym for anymore? You did it. You won. Get out of here. Go home. Eat some Oreos. The people that are not in the best shape, that feel the least welcome in the gym, are precisely the people for whom the gym is designed and for whom it's welcoming. And another thing is, most jacked people and fitness people can't wait to welcome you into their lifestyle. They want you to be a fitness addict just like them. So there's not this cool kids mentality of like, oh my God, you see that girl? Like, why is she even lifting in the gym? Like, she doesn't belong in here. It's the opposite. It's like, oh man, a new girl. Hopefully she doesn't leave the next day. And after a few weeks, I'm going to introduce myself to her as another girl and be like, hey, I lift. It's great that you're lifting and blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden we're sisters. That's how it really works. So the whole idea of like, oh my God, it's super scary is like, again, one of those just giant myths, but a very understandable myth. Cause like, look, it's all fun and games until you see me in real life and you're like, good God. And I walk into the gym first and you're like, I'm just going to go to the Pilates studio because whatever happens in there, that's all a lot. So I get it. But the good news is just there's no actual pressure for almost anyone short of just like annoying dudes that you're just trying to get laid, which you're just going to have that in a lot of places.
Also, the annoying dudes are not that bad. My personal experience is if you bring some headphones and a wedding ring, you're gold. No one's going to No one's going to try and chat you up in the
Wedding.
gym.
You're not married. You're like a fake wedding ring.
Well,
Headphones have no music.
if you're that worried, you could bring
Yeah,
a fake
for
wedding
sure.
ring. It would do the trick.
For
Yeah,
sure.
powerlifting culture is really nice in my experience. I mean, I've done a combination of Bikram yoga. I was going to mention on the macho thing. It is the only type of yoga in my experience where you will actually get quite a lot of men in the room, and it's because it's the hardest type of yoga. Because it's hot and because it's 90 minutes, right? So that I completely agree, that thing of men just wanting to like smash their heads against brick walls just to feel something. You can totally see this in exercise culture. um, Pilates, rowing, whatever. Powerlifting has a really nice culture, and one of the reasons for that is because you have a break between sets, and so you can chat to people. You actually get
Mm-hmm.
to know people, and there's a real
Mm-hmm.
culture. Yeah, it's really nice. I love this idea of kind of harnessing your female conscientiousness to this purpose, because I definitely do that. And one of the things that is so nice about lifting heavy is being having these little wins every week that you lift, even if it's just an extra kilo. You feel it's just great. It's so nice psychologically to feel like you're making these little bits of progress every week, and you don't really get that with most other. I mean, like Peloton does quite a good job of giving you that, where you can look at your charts and you can feel like you're on a positive trajectory. But that's pretty rare, actually. The feeling, the minute measurement of success that lifting offers is really cool. And it's one of the reasons, actually, this is my second pregnancy, and I can't lift now at all because I've got really bad symphysis pubis dysfunction. But both pregnancies I stopped lifting completely because I actually found that going into the gym and getting worse every week completely obliterated any enjoyment I got from it. Completely. It made me realize how much the improvement matters in terms of it feeling rewarding.
Yes. And that 1 kilo at a time, that is actually much closer to the optimal rate of improvement that makes you incredibly different and stronger and healthier over the long term than is 5 or 10 kilos at a time. And one of the things, we have a YouTube channel, Renaissance Periodization. I just type in RP Strength on YouTube. My face will pop up. You can watch some videos. But a lot of the videos that we have over the years have been trying to get males to pull back from their irrational desires to do dumb shit and to be more calculating, to be more female-like, to be more conscientious, to be more okay with slow progress. The female approach to progression, so long as the progression occurs, is better. It's better to go up by a kilo every week than it is to try to go up by 5 or 10, back snaps, and then you're in the hospital for a bit, then you rehab and all this dumb shit. Females almost never get hurt in resistance training for a few reasons, but one of them is they're just not prone to dumb shit, not prone to egotistical, just like going to the moon every time. And so just that approach of, I want my technique to be awesome. I might videotape myself. I might open up an OnlyFans. I'm kidding. That's an off color joke. And then I want my numbers, my sets. I have to do what the app says or whatever, what my program says. And I have to hit all the numbers and I have to do the reps and the weight. And at some point during some week, it's going to get hard. And it's going to get tough to push. And then I gotta give some thought to, I got my lady impulses, but now it's time to lean in a little bit more into that Wonder Woman shit and make it happen. But that's only like 1 or 2 weeks out of every 6 to 8 weeks where you really just gotta, the rest of the time it's tough, but it's a very manageable kind of tough. And that is the core of how that long-term progress, is situated. If someone shows me some dude or some girl in the gym and they're doing like a leg press and they're screaming and just agony and wobbling and they're like, that person's going to be great. I don't know, maybe. Or they're just like, they're just that kind of guy that comes in every 2 weeks and just does dumb shit. That's like 90% of the gym. You show me a girl who has excellent technique and puts on her mean girl face for the last couple of reps of a set, I'm going to show you someone that if they stick around, they're going to get way, way better. So in many respects, the feminine side of lifting, the consistency, the attention to technique, the meticulousness of filling out your whole plan and tracking everything, this pays bigger dividends than trying really, 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 really hard psychotically, which you'll hear a lot about how important effort is, but you hear it mostly from like the reels kitsch of male extreme lifting world that just needs to hear that shit over and over because they like it. It's like a honor culture type of thing. It's not like it's effective. It's not like that's the thing now. It's good to be strong and tough and push through the last few reps, but they over-index on that way too much. The reality of how you succeed in lifting is consistency over time. And females are usually better at that than males are. And that's the female superpower that can get you all these cool results.
The episode is not over. There is another maybe 30 minutes of content, but it is behind a paywall. If you would like access to that content, if you would like to show support for the show, paid subscriptions are what keep it on the road. Allow me to pay my producers, put food on the table, all that important stuff. The extended version of the podcast is available at my Substack, louiseperry.substack.com. That's where you can also find, as I say every week, bonus episodes, extended episodes, the MMM chat community, all of this. Please sign up for a paid subscription. It makes such an enormous difference to my ability to keep producing the podcast and grow it even bigger, produce more episodes, all that good stuff. There are other ways that you can show your support for the show as well. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can like us on YouTube. You can tell your friends and family how much you like the show. If you find it valuable, all of these things make an enormous difference to our ability to keep making it. Thank you so much.